Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're cracking open the files of Professor Oscar Katwood for a deep dive into an absolute biological marvel, the neurobiology of the Gateborn twins, Kael and Elara. We aren't just talking about cool abilities here. We're looking at the hard, measurable mechanics of a nervous system wired fundamentally differently from ours. If you want to know how human biology can literally be tuned to fight systemic manipulation, you're in the exact right place.
I want you to picture the main screen in Professor Katwood's darkened lab. What's crawling across that holo display is basically an impossible biological anomaly. We're looking at an infant's EEG traces, and the brainwaves? They are holding completely steady, rising and falling like a totally calm sea. Just look at that perfect, mirror-like symmetry between the left and right hemispheres. In standard developmental neurobiology, that just doesn't happen.
So what are we actually looking at here? Well, this condition is what's known as the H state, or permanent hemisynchrony. To put that into perspective, getting that kind of unbroken coherence between your left and right hemispheres normally takes seasoned meditators years of intense practice. And even then, they usually need expensive neuro-audio protocols just to hold it for a few fleeting seconds. But Kael and Elara, they were literally born with it. Complete continuous synchrony is just their everyday baseline operating state.
Looking at this data, Katwood had this clinical but honestly pretty fateful realization. These kids were not just some random genetic mutation. According to his models, where the universe functions as a self-correcting holographic system, Kael and Elara were a direct biological response. They were engineered by the universe to generate coherence, pushing back against the aggressive decoherence caused by the Darchitect. They're the very first true Gateborn.
Section 1. Kael, phase-locked brain mechanics.
Let's break this anomaly down, starting with Kael, who operates as what we call the silent receiver. To understand him, we really need to look at how his brain handles dominance. Normally, as kids grow up, the intuitive right hemisphere eventually hands the reins over to the analytical left hemisphere. But Kael's neurobiology flat out refused to do that. Instead, his two lobes rose and fell together, and trained like twin metronomes, completely locked in phase. And because of that phase-lock synchrony, Kael became incredibly sensitive to holographic input. Basically, his nervous system physically processes the subtle emotional and bioelectric fields surrounding all living things.
And this brilliantly illustrates what living with that kind of neurobiology actually feels like day to day. Kael doesn't just guess how you're feeling. His body processes ambient emotional data as actual sensory input. He can feel the electric thrum of streetlights right before they flick on. He literally tastes the tension in a room the same way you or I would taste salt on our tongues. And if he walks past a stranger carrying some deep, buried grief, Kael feels it as a physical pressure change in his own chest.
Section 2. Elara, integrated neural wiring.
Now let's look at his twin sister, Elara, who manifests this hemisynchrony entirely differently, as a translator and healer. Just like her brother, Elara's left hemisphere never bullied her right hemisphere into submission, but her adaptation was totally unique. Her analytical left side structurally wired itself around her intuitive right core, rather than building over it. This created a bizarre, beautiful kind of cognitive bilingualism. She can take insanely complex concepts, like torus field energy structures or cosmic field equations, and her brain translates them into vivid stories, geometries, and colors. She literally processes profound physics as narrative art.
Putting them side by side gives us the full picture here. It's the exact same baseline condition, permanent hemisynchrony, but it manifests in two completely distinct neuroperceptual frameworks. Kael is the receiver, processing reality in waves, pulses, and the bioelectric hum of the body. Elara is the translator, seeing the world in luminous grids and narrative colors. Put them together, and you've got a full-spectrum biological countermeasure.
Section 3. The Darchitect's neurological threat.
But a countermeasure to what exactly? Well, to understand why their biology is so crucial, we have to look at the Darchitect. And we're not talking about some mystical villain here, but a measurable, systemic neurological pathogen. The way it attacks is terrifyingly clinical. It doesn't use dramatic mind control. Instead, it weaponizes biological triggers. It constantly pushes us into intense left hemisphere dominance, trapping our brains in this tight corridor of survival timelines and productivity quotas. It overclocks our analytical minds with linear fear, starving our intuition. And by saturating our environments with noisy electromagnetic patterns, it ensures our hearts and brains practically never experience coherence.
The ultimate goal of all this environmental static is simple, and honestly, pretty chilling: the absolute erosion of self-cognition.
We're talking about losing the capacity to simply observe your own thoughts and confidently say, hey, this feeling is mine, versus this feeling is being forced on me. When you cut an entire species off from their intuitive perception and scramble their ability to monitor their own internal state, well, they become incredibly easy to herd and manipulate.
Section 4. Bioelectric entrainment and healing. So how do we actually fight back against that? That brings us to the evolutionary solution Kael and Elara bring to the table. Because their baseline state is total coherence, they can physically heal others and teach them to correct their own frequencies. Kael uses a deceptively simple clinical mechanic called the body field reset. You just straighten your spine, place your hands on your chest and belly, and match a specific rhythm. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 6. On that long exhale, you imagine your body like a tuning fork vibrating outward. When a distracting thought pops up, you don't follow the story of it, you just feel the physical tug in your body and let that bioelectric vibration wash right through it.
Now, this isn't just some relaxing breathing exercise. We're talking measurable neuroscience. When Katwood hooked up participants doing this exact reset, the data was wild. Stressed nervous systems almost immediately dropped out of busy, anxious, high beta states, and in their place, smooth, coherent alpha and theta patterns rose significantly. Heart rhythms synced right up with their breathing. They were inducing high-amplitude, low-frequency brain states without any machines whatsoever.
Elara takes a different route with her inner image alignment, which specifically targets the emotional memory loop. She has you recall the internal shape of a loved one, not their baggage or their story, just the shape they make inside you. You focus on the color of that shape and brighten it with every single inhale. If difficult feelings come up, you don't fight them. You just watch them pass through that steady, glowing main color like dark swirls. Katwood actually observed this causing micro shifts in skin conductance and muscle tension. It was literally re-encoding chaotic emotional memories into stable, holographic images.
So, the crucial point here is summed up perfectly by Elara. The underlying mechanism at play is biological entrainment. Because Elara's heart rhythm and brain waves sit in this deeply coherent pattern, if you put a distressed person near her, their physiology will literally sync up to hers through proximity and focused attention. The Darchitect static tries to scramble our biological shape, right? But Elara's coherent baseline acts like a tuning template, reminding the nervous system how to get back to its original unbroken geometry.
Section 5. Reclaiming self-cognition.
The whole point of Katwood's research wasn't just to observe 2 miraculous kids. It was to figure out how these simple techniques could form a planetary counterfield, how ordinary people could resist the Darchitect's noisy frequencies from the inside out and reclaim their self-cognition. Elara came up with the ultimate test for this. If a voice in your head is driving you toward panic, hold it there and demand it show you its source as an image. If it shows you your own organic memories, that's you. But if it flashes a cold, machine-like symbol or abstract static, that is not your thought. It's the Darchitect's imposed frequency. When students did this inner check, Katwood's monitors showed the frontal regions of their brains, the self-monitoring centers, lighting up instantly. Just the act of questioning literally shatters those carrier waves of external manipulation.
Which leaves us with a pretty massive question to ponder as we wrap up today. Knowing what we now know about holographic input and biological entrainment, if your nervous system is constantly absorbing the bioelectric frequencies around you, are your current thoughts truly your own? Or are you just echoing the engineered static of your environment? You know, it might just be time to straighten your spine, take a long exhale, and find out.